Yeah! Heck yes! And they say yeah! Come on! Cause all I do is win, win. And if you win, put your hands in the air, make them say all I do is win! All I do is win! Love that song! Hey, welcome to F8, okay? We're gonna change the universe! I say that every year. All right, I want to start by focusing on some key issues, okay? The first is the importance of authentic identity. I am Mark Zuckerberg. And under this sweatshirt are rock-solid, cut and greased abs. Yeah. Great. Now let's skip to the part where I brag about user growth. Yeah. This past year was huge, okay? We've continued to expand throughout the world to the point that, honestly, we just stopped counting you guys. I don't know. To give some perspective, it's more people than the population of Europe. It's more people than are in the cast of Glee. It's even more people than claim they came up with Facebook. Burn! Oh. But how many, you ask? Who cares? Don't ask so many questions. I mean, MySpace asked a lot of questions, and I chloroformed it, drove it out to the desert, and put a bullet in the back of its skull. Kidding, kidding. Not kidding. But my point is our focus has now shifted from user growth to user engagement. User engagement is, of course, when Charlie Sheen gets married. Kidding! He uses drugs a lot. It actually refers to how we interact online, and the trend is toward more sharing, okay? You wake up, share it with your friends. You're out of toothpaste, share it with your friends. You take a crazy big number 2, don't share it with your friends, that's for Twitter. Okay. Yeah, okay. But, you hear me, you know who you are, but the future is heading toward greater openness, okay? Take my dog, for example. Now, B started his Facebook page 6 months ago, and thanks to his deeply personal sharing, he already has 200,000 fans. I mean, this popularity has led to his new moniker, the Lil Wayne of dogs. There he is. You know, that's the kind of openness Beast believes in, and this trend is nothing new. In 2008, a young, brash man, Zuck Dog, theorized that the amount of people share doubles every year. Now, this came true and is now known as Zuckerberg's law. It sounds impressive, I know, but actually, having your own law is no big deal, okay? Anyone can do it. You just start with a postulate or axiom and work your way up. Or you could hang out with girls. They're both great options, totally up to you. But the bottom line is you get closer to your authentic identity when you share everything. Even intimate information can be shared in separate groups now. I mean, heck, there are times when I share just with myself. Sometimes several times a day. Sometimes in the bathroom at work, which I own, so no one can say it's weird. Right, Greg? Right? Yeah. Okay. I'm also proud to announce some new features on Facebook. For example, a new section in your list of friends. It's called, I'm not really friends with these people. No. Yeah. It's the perfect place to put awkward classmates from middle school, older drunk women you meet at charity events, racist neighbors, and aunts, okay? I'm not really friends with these people. It lets everyone know I don't want to be associated with these guys, but I could only ignore them for so long. And also, are you sick of getting drunk and poking someone you shouldn't? Like a coworker or someone you met 5 minutes ago or your cousin? Well, I'm proud to now introduce a new feature called the slow poke. It's the only poke that takes 24 hours to reach the person you send it to. So you have a full day to sober up, realize you're an idiot, and retract the poke. The slow poke, because any dude who's had more than 2 beers becomes a raging horn dog. Yeah. It's a hypothetical slide. Okay. And now here's a song I wrote this morning at breakfast. 2, 3, 4, trail mix. It's crunchy and sweet, yeah, trail mix. Don't drop it on the floor, Andy. Yeah.
Andy, the hell are you doing?
Who's Andy? I'm Mark Zuckerberg, rock hard abs.
No, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. You're Andy Samberg from SNL.
Yeah, I don't think so. Hoodie, sandals, it's classic Zuck dog. Slide?
All right, you can drop the act now, man.
Fine, but I don't know, sometimes I want to be you, Mark. You know, I want to walk in your shoes. I want to take your face off.
Don't quote face off.
Hey, loan me $1 billion?
Is that for weed again?
I have glaucoma.
Look, man, you're just out here making stuff up. The slowpoke, that's not even a real feature. The deal was I was going to feed you information through the earpiece and you were going to repeat me.
Earpiece? Oh, right, you mean this. Yeah, I see the problem. It was in my pocket. Technical difficulties, right?
Yeah, dude, we call that user error.
Good one, Mark. Man, look at us up here, though, right? I mean, this truly is a gathering of the Bergs.
What other Bergs are there?
Oh, funny you should ask, because look over here. It's our old pal, Jesse Eisenberg.
Oh, man, don't do impressions.
Oh, hey, Mark, wow. This whole thing is so meta. It's almost Kafkaesque in a sense. If you'd invented Facebook, you would have invented Facebook. I'm sorry. This is going to come out of nowhere. But may I kiss you?
No, don't kiss me. Don't kiss me.
Okay. Sorry, I was in the zone. Something just carries away. But uh-oh, look out, because another Berg just showed up, and he's a real fighter.
Oh no, not Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, Zuck, how's it going? You created Facebook, right? That's pretty cool. Hey, is that slowpoke thing real? I could really use that.
No, you just invented it. You just invented it, Andy.
Okay. Well, it's nice to meet you. Say hi to your mother for me, okay?
All right, Andy. I got to do the keynote. Have a good show on Saturday.
All right. I'm probably going to phone it in, actually. Use up all my good stuff on this. Beast forever!
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
Andy Samberg, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. It's our 4th F8, and even though we've launched a lot of things recently, what I want to show you today are 2 of the most exciting things we've been working on in a while. So, although Andy was joking, a lot of the points that he made were actually right. Looking back, the last 5 years of social networking have been about getting people signed up and getting people connected with all of the people in their lives. And until recently, there were a lot of people who weren't sure how big this phenomenon of people connecting online would be, or how long it would last. But by now, I think that most people see that social networks are going to be a ubiquitous tool used by billions of people around the world to stay connected every day. So just last week, we had a pretty cool milestone at Facebook. For the first time ever, in a single day, we had 500 million people use Facebook. 500 million people. And more people continue to sign up and use the service every day. But going forward, what's even more interesting and exciting than getting people connected and just signing up is all the things that are now possible now that all of these connections are in place. So the next 5 years, the next era, is going to be defined by the apps and the depth of engagement that is now possible now that everyone has their connections already in place and this whole network has already been established. So it's an exciting time to be a part of building all these new social apps that are now possible. Today, I want to start off by talking about the heart of your Facebook experience, the profile. Because for every major evolution of the product that we've ever done, the profile is at the center. People feel an intense ownership over their profile. It's where you put all your stuff. It's where you have everything about you. Millions of people have invested a ton of time in telling the story of their life on their profile. It's a really personal product. And Our job is to make this product the best way for you to share everything that you want and the best way for you to express who you are. Now, how this has worked has changed a bunch over the years. So this is the first profile from 2004. It was so basic. We often talk about your profile at Facebook as if it's what you'd share with someone when you first met them in a first conversation that you were having. This profile is the first 5 minutes of your conversation. It's just the basics. It's an introduction. You can say where you're from, where you went to school, where you work, whether you're in a relationship, maybe list some interests, but not much else. You could post one photo, but there were no photo albums, no groups or events or anything else. There wasn't even a wall. But people loved this product. It was revolutionary because it was the first place that most people had on the internet where they felt safe expressing their real self. This is a pretty big deal. So even though it was only the first 5 minutes of your conversation, it was really valuable to be able to discover those first 5 minutes worth of content about your friends and all the people around you. But people wanted more ways to express themselves, so we started adding things like status updates and photos and groups and apps, and quickly this profile reached the limit of what it could express. If the first 5 minutes of your conversation is about the basics and an introduction, then the next 15 is about what you've been doing recently in your life. So in 2008, we introduced a completely new profile, and by this point, people were sharing so many things that the focus of the profile had shifted from just a few pieces of basic information that barely ever changed to all of the things that you've shared and done recently. This made the profile a lot richer and more engaging, and it allowed you to have the next 15 minutes of your conversation. But the problem is, we're more than just what we did recently. Most deep conversations that you get into all different parts of your life and all kinds of different things. And on social networks today, that's just not really that easy to do. Sure, you could go down to the bottom of the wall and press more to see a few more weeks worth of content, but who wants to do that more than a couple of times? I don't think anyone. And even if you did, you'd have to wade through every single status update just to get to all the important stuff. So all the stories that you've shared over time just fall off a cliff at the bottom of your wall and effectively disappear. Millions and millions of people have spent years curating the stories of their lives, and today, there's just no good way to share them. We think that this is a real problem, and we think that we have the solution. Instead of having to go to the bottom of your wall and clicking more, imagine expressing the story of your life where you have all the recent stuff that you've done, and then all the most important and meaningful things from your life are highlighted and called out for you to see right there. And because these are the unique moments from your life, imagine an expression that is beautiful. So if the original profile was the first 5 minutes of your conversation, and the stream was the next 15, then what I want to show you today is the rest. It's the next few hours of a great, in-depth, engaging conversation, whether it's with a close friend or with someone you just met. It's the heart of your Facebook experience, completely rethought from the ground up. So this is the first thing that I want to show you today. We've been working on it all year, and we're calling it Timeline. Timeline is the story of your life. And it has 3 pieces: all your stories, all your apps, and a new way to express who you are. All your stories, all your apps, and a new way to express who you are. So let's take a look at Timeline. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's just a lot more visual. Down at the bottom here, you have all your stories. Right, here's a nice visual. This is a photo of a bunch of engineers at Facebook working on some of the products that we're going to roll out today. This bottom section, all your stories, it's just like the wall. It's just laid out. It's much more nicely designed. Over on the right there, you'll see years, and you can just use that to quickly get to any point in your life, and you can just see all your content. In the middle here are these visual tiles, so you can get to all of your apps and all of the stuff that you've done in any of your apps. And of course, on top is the cover photo, so you can express who you are. All your stories, all your apps, a new way to express who you are. It's all here. So now, let's take a look at a full timeline. And here we go. You just scroll past, rolls up all the stuff from your life, great photos, a map of the places that I've been, some food that I cooked, a Mark Zuckerberg doll, some friends that I made, all the places that I've been to, and it just keeps going, and there are all the years of my life right here, all the way to the bottom. And here's what it looks like on a mobile device. And there you go. We'll just breeze through that. Same cute baby photo. So that's timeline. Now I want to show you how it works. The biggest challenge that we had designing timeline was figuring out a way to help you tell all the important stories from your life on a single page. You don't just want to show only your recent stuff, because that would just be the wall. But you also don't want to show every single little thing that you've ever done, because a lot of that stuff isn't really critical in defining who you are, especially as you go back in time. So what timeline does is it starts off showing all the stuff you've done recently, and as you go further back in time, it starts summarizing and surfacing only the important things from your life. And the further back you go, the more it'll summarize for you. So this month, for example, timeline might show everything that I've done. And last month a little less, and then for the rest of the year before that a little less, and last year even less, and so on. This is the magic behind how timeline works, and it's how you can tell the whole story of your life on a single page. So now, to take a look, you can scroll down to my recent section, and you'll just see all of my stories right here. Here's a nice photo of me and Chris from Chris's wedding. And there's a nice post right at the top for us celebrating our first day with 500 million people. So the stories are much nicer. It's just like the wall that you had before. Everything that you've shared recently is right here. Now, if you want to go back in time, you can just go ahead to the right and click on a year in the time slider. I'm going to click on 2007, and it'll just scroll you down quickly to 2007. And what you'll see here is that this isn't all of the stuff that I did in 2007. It's just the most important stuff. So here's some photos from the first F8 when we rolled out platform. It was a really exciting time. And you can see this timeline running down the middle here. And on it, there are two kinds of dots. There's these blue dots that are lit up that are showing important content that's highlighted. And there are these gray dots because they're showing things that are less important, maybe comments or little things that I did during that time period that are hidden. But it's all there, and you can get to it all if you want it. It's your whole life. So if you want to see one of these things that's hidden, you just go ahead and you hover over it, and it shows up. In this case, you can see Timeline has decided to hide a picture of an empty podium, not a bad choice. But it's all right here. If I want to go to to see everything in 2007, I can just click on that link, and it's all there, and it'll show up. It's so simple. This is exactly how you want to browse through time. It's a great way to discover all the stuff that people have done their whole life. So since this is my whole life, I have to be able to add stuff, right? So how do I do that? Say I want to add this photo from my childhood. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the timeline on the middle, and it's going to pop up a composer. I'm going to click that I want to add the photo, and post, and there we are. I still have that tie. It's really cool. It's really fun and easy to fill out your timeline and with all the stories from your past. Now, sometimes you want to add a piece of content, but other times you want to add an important event from your life. So in order to make this easy, we've created a completely new type of content for these special life events. And the way you add these is the same. You just click on the timeline, you go to the major life event that you want to add. In this case, I'm going to add that I got a dog, which I did earlier this year. Fill out Beast's info, add a photo, and there we are. Beast, joining our family. He's cute. So this is the main timeline. It's got all my stuff here. But what do you do if you want to see timeline filtered down to just one type of content? Well, you can click on these nice visual tiles at the top, and you can go to these filters that we've designed that what we call timeline views that take you to a view of timeline that just shows one type of content. So here's the photos timeline view. And you can see, here's some people working at Facebook, a friend graduating, game day at Facebook, some people visiting, everything there. It's much nicer than anything we have today. And I also want to show you this map timeline view. You can see everywhere that you've been on a map. It's really neat. You can see I spent a lot of time in California. There are a bunch of trips to New York to visit my family, Thanksgiving with the family in Florida, trips to Europe to come visit a bunch of our offices out there. It's all right there. And you can use the timeline slider on the right to see where you were in a period. This is earlier this year. And you can go all the way back to where you were born. It's pretty cool. I'll show you more timeline views in a bit. That's just two of them. So that's the overview of how you see all of your stories on timeline. Now I want to talk about apps and how apps are going to help you tell the story of your life on your timeline. People who use Facebook really love apps. When we first rolled out the platform in 2007, perhaps the most common thing that people used apps for was to add boxes of things that they wanted to their profiles. If you remember at the time, people add so many boxes. A lot of people added 50 or 60 or even 100 boxes. It was really crazy. It was way more than we expected. They just added them to the bottom of their profile, and it quickly became unwieldy. We learned from the experience that people really want to use apps to express themselves. And even though they couldn't all fit into the old profile design, we took those lessons and we designed them into timeline. So now you can use apps to express as much content as you want on your timeline. So we think that people are going to want to express all kinds of things about their lives. And the way they're going to do this is they're going to rely on apps to help them out. So what kinds of content can I put on my timeline? Well, you can start sharing things from apps in just the same way that you did before, and they'll show up as these nicely designed timeline stories. So if we zoom down a bit, here is an example where I'm using a social cooking app to add that I'm cooking delicious bison burgers, which were delicious. And now, so that's just a normal story right there. Since timeline can help you summarize all your stories, no activity is too big or too small to share. So if you want, you can add a box of right to the top of all the recent stuff that you've done with an app. It's all right there. An app can help you do that. And because timeline summarizes things for you, this is one of those things that, as it gets rolled up into a past time period, is probably going to become one of those gray dots. Now, one of the big new things we've added is called reports. This is a report of everything that I've cooked so far in September. The idea here is that a lot of the time, seeing a summary of what you've done is just a lot more interesting and better for expressing yourself than showing every single thing that you've done. So apps can help you roll up all the activity that you're taking into these nice reports. So you can get them every month and every year, and you just get a nice summary that it's really interesting and it helps you express who you are on your timeline. And we think that people are really going to like these. So I can just go ahead and click on any of those stories, and it'll take me to a timeline view where I can just see all of the content from my timeline all the way back in time. So if the app has added history to my timeline, you can just zoom back and you can see everything that I've ever cooked or the reports. It's all right here, all my timeline. So how do you add an app to your timeline? Well, you can add apps in all the same ways that you would have discovered apps before. But one way that we think that you're going to discover a lot of apps is from your friends' timelines. So here's Brett's timeline, and I see he has this nice running app that he's using to keep track of his runs. And I think that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to hover over it and click Add to Timeline, and I'm going to get this nice pop-up that, well, we're supposed to. Yeah, there we go. That is a nice quick permission screen, which, as you can see, it's completely redesigned now around the idea that the reason why you're adding these apps is that you can add stuff to your timeline. So it shows you the type of story that's going to be there, and I can just click on it, add to my timeline. It's right on my timeline. It's really easy. So that's how apps can help you tell the story of your life on your timeline. And I'm going to get into a little more detail about how to actually build these apps in a bit. Now, there's one more big piece. With Timeline, we didn't just want to design a place for you to put all your stories and apps. We wanted to design a place that feels like your home. Where you tell your story online is really personal. You invest a lot of time in it, and you curate it. You link to it, and you tell all your friends to find you there. So we wanted to make Timeline a place that you're proud to call your home. So Timeline is a completely new aesthetic for Facebook. And it starts with giving you the ability to highlight and curate all your stories so that you can express who you really are. So the first thing you're going to notice when you go to someone's timeline is this cover photo right at the top. What better way to tell the story of who you are than putting a nice big photo right at the top of your timeline? You still have your profile pic, so you can use your cover to express a unique moment from your life, something that you're interested in. It's just a great way to learn about who a person is without having to read anything about them at all. Now, you can change your cover as often as you'd like. And as we've been using this product internally, some people change it every day. It's really easy. You just go ahead, you hover over Reddit cover, you pick a new photo, you crop it, and boom, another cool beast photo. I just love the way his dad looks. I can't wait until he looks like that. So that's the top of your timeline. So what about highlighting important events from your life? Now, take this photo of me and Priscilla. This is from the first road trip that we took together. It's our first vacation. So it's a really meaningful photo for me. And I want to highlight it on my timeline. So how do I do this? Well, you can just hover over any story that you want on timeline. You get this star. And you can click it, and you get a big version of the story that you can just feature on your timeline as a major event. And starring also tells Timeline what is important to you, so that as it helps you summarize your past events, it just calls out all the important stuff and features all the stuff that you want it to. So of course, if there's something that you want to hide, like an old wall post from a friend that's not relevant, you just hover over it and get rid of it. And if there's something that Timeline missed because it's behind one of those gray dots, you just go ahead and you hover over the gray dot, and you can add it. It's right there. You have complete control over everything on your timeline. You can control what's there, but you can also control who sees everything. So if you want to see, you can just glance over any story, and so you can see it, and you can change the privacy in line by just clicking on it, and there we go. This is a cool one, so let's make it public. So Timeline is for you to express who you are. And you have complete control over your timeline, what you show there, how you display it, and who can see it. Now, one of the things that I've just found amazing with Timeline is how different people's timelines can feel. Here's a traveler's timeline. And as you scroll through it, you can just see all these beautiful pictures from the trips that she's been on. It's really neat. It feels like her. It feels really unique. Here is a musician's timeline. And running through it, I mean, the nice cover right at the top, and you can see the instruments that they're playing, photos from their gigs, hanging out with the band. You just looking at this, I mean, without even getting into the content, you just get this nice visceral feel for who this person is. It feels really cool. Now, of course, I've showed most of the stuff today on web, just because with the bigger screen, it's easier to explain it, but all of this stuff just works beautifully on fully immersive mobile devices. And here's a runner's timeline on mobile. And again, you just see all the photos of her running all the way back to when she was a little kid. So that's Timeline. It's the story of your life. You have all your stories, all your apps, and a new way to express who you are. And now, I'd like to show you a little video that we made about timeline. We're really proud of Timeline. We think it's an important next step to help you tell the story of your life. But even more important, in order to make this work, we've had to invent a completely new class of apps. So that's what I want to talk to you about next. The next version of Open Graph and a completely new class of apps. Facebook's mission is to make the world more open and connected. And the way that we do this is by helping you map out all of the things that you're connected to so you can have a more personal experience in all of the apps and things that you do. We often talk about this map that we're helping you create as a graph of connections. And in 2007, at our very first F8, I introduced the concept of the social graph, all of the relationships between people in the world. Last year, we introduced the concept of the open graph as not only the map of all the relationships in the world, but the map of all of the connections in the world. And as a first step towards this, we made it so that you can add anything you wanted to the map and that you could connect to it by liking it. And this made it so that you could connect to an order of magnitude more things than you could before. This year, we're taking the next step. We're going to make it so that you can connect to anything you want in any way you want. So now, you don't have to like a book. You can just read a book, which is good because you've probably read about 10 times more books than you'd want to like on Facebook anyway. And you don't have to like a movie. You can just watch a movie, which is also pretty good because you've probably also watched about 10 times as many movies as you'd want to like on Facebook. You can just eat a meal. You can hike a trail. You can listen to a song. You can connect to anything in any way you want. And we think that this is going to make it so that you can make an order of magnitude more connections than you could before. Sometimes I think about what we're doing with the Open Graph as if we're helping to define a brand new language for how people connect. And when we started, the vocabulary was really limited. You can only express a small number of basic things, like who you were friends with. Then last year, when we introduced the Open Graph, we added nouns. So you could like anything that you wanted. And this year, we're adding verbs. We're going to make it so that you can connect to anything in any way you want. Now, building this language for how people connect is pretty important. So we're doing it carefully and slowly. And every year, we take the next step, and we make some new social apps possible, and we make it so that people can express themselves in new ways. So how is this going to help you express yourself in new ways? Well, one thing that we've heard over and over again is that people have things that they want to share, but they don't want to annoy their friends by putting boring stuff in their news feeds. So you have stuff that you'd share, but you don't want to annoy your friends. So if the problem is that when you post something, it goes into newsfeed and takes up all your friends' attention, then our solution is to create a new place that's lighter weight, where you can see lighter weight stuff that's going on. And that's how we came up with Ticker. So Ticker is a lightweight stream of everything that's going on around you. And something might catch your attention out of the corner of your eye, but because it's moving by so quickly, you'll never feel annoyed by a friend if their lightweight activity shows up there. So when you share a post, it goes into newsfeed. But when you add activity through the Open Graph, it goes into Ticker, and it goes onto your timeline, but it's not going to show up in newsfeed unless there's a particularly interesting pattern that your friends are going to want to see. So that's what this update to the Open Graph is going to do. Before today, there was really no socially acceptable way to express lightweight activity, and now there is. And we think that this is going to make it so that people can express an order of magnitude more things than they could before. So that's what we're going to do today. That's what this next version of Open Graph is all about. We spent the last year making it so that you can connect to anything you want in any way you want. You just define an action and you publish it. That's it. It's really easy. It's simple, but it's really, really powerful. And we think that this is going to make it possible to build a completely new class of social apps that weren't possible before. So what kind of apps? Well, a lot of apps. We believe that eventually almost all apps that you use are going to be social, but in the world there's a natural spectrum from behaviors that are really naturally social to ones that aren't. And the ones that are naturally social are going to be the ones that turn into social apps first. So on one side of the spectrum, you have really social things like communication and games. And there are already social apps for those. And on the other side of the spectrum are things that are really sensitive and private, like healthcare or finance, that I think there probably won't be social apps for a long time. Now, with this update to Open Graph, we're going to expand the set of industries and products that are becoming social to now include a couple more. And first is everything to do with media. Music, movies, TV, news, books, all really naturally social. We think that there are going to be great Open Graph apps in this category. And the next is what we call lifestyle apps. They're apps for helping you keep track of and expressing all kinds of different things about your life. Your runs, your bike rides, your cooking and eating, your sleeping, your happiness, your fashion, anything you want. So today, we're making it possible to build a completely new class of apps and to rethink a lot of industries at the same time. So let's take a closer look. The Open Graph is going to enable apps that primarily focus on two types of things. The first is helping you fill out your timeline, which we've already discussed. And the second is helping you discover new things through your friends. And we're going to do this in three ways. With frictionless experiences, real-time serendipity, and finding patterns in your friends' activity. So let's start with frictionless experiences. Now, I don't know how many of you guys saw this internet meme that was going around of the classic game Mario, where this iconic image where he finds his first mushroom and all of a sudden it pops up a box prompting you to share it on Facebook. I cried when I saw this. Now, I appreciate that whoever made this realized that all modern games should be social, but I also empathize with it because it really is one of the worst experiences on our platform today when you're just in the middle of some app doing something and all of a sudden it just pops something up and asks you to share. So today we want to make it so that this is you no longer have to do this. So if you're using one of these new Open Graph apps, you're going to be able to add activity to your timeline without ever having to see one of these prompts again. You can still publish to the stream if you want. Yeah, no, I'm happy. You can still publish to your stream if you'd like. But if your goal is to just add lightweight activity, you'll never have to see one of these prompts again. So the best way to think about these kind of apps is that you're connecting the app and your timeline together. You're adding all of the activity and history in the app to your timeline, and you're going to automatically keep them in sync going forward. So that way, anything that you do in the app gets added to your timeline. So to make this work, we completely redesigned the permissions dialog around the idea that the reason why you're adding an app is that you can add this activity. So in this case, I'm going to add Spotify. And I showed you this before, but it's worth looking at again in the context of what I just discussed. So you'll notice that it's really clear to me what Spotify is going to do. Right at the top, it says, this is what Spotify is going to add to your timeline. The songs that you've listened to, your radio stations, the albums that you listen to, and you get this nice big story of what it's going to look like. So you just get this preview, and you're never surprised. And you can control who sees it right there. Now, I see this story. I think it's pretty cool. I want that on my timeline. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Add to Timeline. And now Spotify is on my timeline. And now it can add activity for me. And I'm off to the app. And of course, I can always modify these settings later if I want to. Now, from here on out, it's a frictionless experience. Because Spotify made clear to me early what kind of activity it was going to publish, and I saw the story and I was like, yeah, that looks cool, I want that. Now, Spotify isn't going to have to prompt me every time I do something, and it's going to add activity to my timeline. So it's a frictionless experience. So how is this going to help you discover new things through your friends? Well, it turns out that your friends are already doing a lot of things around you all the time. They just don't have a good way to share it today. So as soon as we light this up, all of these dots that are out there are going to be connected, and you're going to discover a lot of things that your friends are already doing around you right now. We call this real-time serendipity. So now, even before I start using Spotify, I can see what my friends are doing live as they listen to songs in my ticker. And this creates a lot of serendipitous discovery. So if one of my friends listens to a new song, they'll just tick right in, and okay, that looks cool, so you just hover over it, and we can play it in line, which we're not going to do right now. But it'll just start playing in Spotify. Now I'm listening to the song with my friend, and my music is synced up with theirs. It's a really cool experience. You have to experience it for yourself, but you discover a huge amount of new music this way. Now, of course, if you play a song from a friend, or if another friend does, then that activity is going to be added to Ticker, so your friends or your friends' friends can see it. And in this way, listening can spread really quickly through the graph. It's a really neat phenomenon to see. Now, some activity is more interesting than others. So if someone's listening to a song, that may be interesting for a few minutes. So Ticker is a great place to surface that. But let's say that something that's a bit rarer happens, or if there's some interesting pattern. For example, in this case, Dan has created a whole playlist. That doesn't happen every day. Or a bunch of my friends, in this case, just a couple, but I mean, these stories can get huge, just listen to the same artist at the same time. That's pretty cool. So those are patterns that are interesting, and Newsfeed has decided, okay, those are interesting enough things that we're going to highlight those because we want you to have an opportunity to discover them. Now, in this case, I happen to be a pretty big Green Day fan already, so of course you could click on this and it would just start playing in Spotify. I'm not going to do that here. I'll probably just go ahead and comment on Dan's taste. You finally discovered Green Day. Good work. It's amazing how much music you can discover through your friends. It's really cool. You just see it flow by on the side of your screen or in your news feed if there's an interesting pattern, and you discover a lot of new stuff this way. Now, sometimes you discover things that your friends are doing right now, but other times you want to look at patterns that are building up over a longer period of time. So in this case, if I want to learn about a friend's music taste, I probably don't want to look at every single song they've ever listened to. I want to look at a roll-up and a summary of what their favorite songs and artists are, and maybe some stats about the genres that they listen to or some other things, and you can do that. So here's the music timeline view from Brett's timeline. And I could just see all his stuff that he listens to. Apparently his top song and top album are Kenny G. Brett, we might have to talk about that after F8. I could see all the other stuff that he's listening to. And of course, I can just hover over any of this and play it with whatever music player he used to play it. So by looking at patterns in your friend's activity, you can discover some really neat new things. So you have frictionless experiences, real-time serendipity, and finding patterns in activity. Now let's put it all together and take a look. All right. So I'm on Facebook, and all of a sudden, I see a bunch of my friends listening to stuff on the side of the screen. And I can just hover over it, and I'm immediately going to be listening to the song with them, which means that as soon as I do that, I'm going to be subscribed to their listening, and as they play music, I'm going to be playing along with them, and we'll have a nice ability to talk about it and all that. It's really cool. So let's take a look. Which song should we play? That one. I like Jay-Z. Listen with Mike. Here we go.
Right.
How about another one, Mike? There we go. It's their 20th anniversary of the song this weekend. All right. So that was listening with Mike. And now, I had a notification in the corner, and I can see Austin listened to this Kanye West song that he saw from me. And this is actually one of the coolest parts of the whole product, right? I mean, being able to click on someone's music and play it is a great experience, but knowing that you helped a friend discover something new and that they like your taste in music and that you now have that in common is awesome. And so when someone discovers something from you, you get a notification, and of course, I like the song, so I can just go ahead and play it right here. And
All of the lights.
All right, you get the point. We've worked with a lot of partners on this. And I'm really excited about what this next wave of music companies is doing with Open Graph. They believe that the key to making the music business work isn't trying to block you from listening to songs you haven't bought. It's trying to help you discover so many songs that you end up buying even more content than you ever would have otherwise. In order to make this model work, you have to discover a lot more music. And the best way to do this is to discover it through your friends. So developers are using Open Graph not only to rethink music, but to rethink the whole music industry. And I think that Spotify has done a particularly good job with this, which is why I wanted to show you their app today. And now, I'd like to invite Spotify's CEO, Daniel Ek, up here to talk about what they're doing with Open Graph. Daniel?
Hey, buddy. So, wow. Thanks, Mark, and hi, everyone. So, today is a big day for Facebook, and it's a big day for Spotify. But most importantly, it's a big day for everyone who loves music. I remember the first time when I used Facebook in Sweden back in the day. I reconnected with old friends, and I discovered things about them that I didn't know. It was like serendipity. However, with all due respect, Mark, something could have made it even better: music. So, like most of you, music has always been a very important part of my life. But finding new music has been difficult. I mean, people discover music through their friends. In the old days, we even used to go to each other's houses and browse the record collections. But up until now, that hasn't been possible to do online. So at Spotify, we became obsessed with what the next generation music service ought to look like. And we knew that the service had to be free to draw people away from piracy, helping them to listen to even more music. And to do that, we also knew that the service would have to be inherently social. And there really couldn't be a better place to do it at than Facebook. So a bit over 10 years ago, something changed the music industry, and that was Napster. The problem then was that it didn't work for the music industry. So we spent the last few years building a service which really fairly compensates artists, where people can also discover more music through browsing each other's collections. And it's a really powerful notion. Like, who would have known that you're really into Taylor Swift, for instance? And, yeah, or that I'm into really bad one-hit wonders of the 80s. Well, put that on top of Facebook's 800 million users. Wow. And the world will light up with music. So here's what we know from our millions of users around the world. Spotify users who connect to Facebook listen to more music on a weekly basis. But they also listen to a wider variety of music. We've actually got more than 400 million playlists to back that up. And because they're social, they're more engaged. And because they're more engaged, they're also more than twice as likely to pay for music. So what this is really doing is that social discovery on Facebook means that we're bringing people back to paying for music again. And that's how the brilliant artists who create music can continue to create music for us all to enjoy. So our dream at Spotify is really to make all the world's music readily available for everyone to enjoy, whilst making sure that the artists get a fair deal. So today is a big day for music, and it's an even bigger day for the music industry, but most importantly, it's a big day for all the music lovers around the world. So let's light up the world with music. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Daniel. I really love the app that they've made, and I think that millions of more people are going to enjoy using it. But it's not just Spotify here. More than a dozen developers have worked with us to build social music apps with Open Graph, all with the goal of helping you discover more music through your friends. So I just want to take a minute to thank all of you guys. It's been a lot of fun to rethink how listening to music should work with you. So thanks. Now, Open Graph isn't just about music. We think Open Graph is going to be great for discovering all kinds of content, including TV shows and movies. So here's how this works. It's really similar to what I just showed you with music. You can see what your friends are watching in Ticker, or if there are interesting patterns in Newsfeed. And right here at the top of Newsfeed, I'll see 6 of my friends are watching an episode of Glee on Hulu. And I can just hover over that and click and watch it in a new social Canvas app that Hulu has built. And because this is a Canvas app, that means that everyone who uses it will be a Facebook user and will have a social experience. Now, further down the page here, you can see that 4 of my friends have recently watched movies with Johnny Depp in them, which is interesting by itself. I mean, that's an interesting pattern for Newsfeed to show you. There's nothing like that in the product today, and it just highlights that now with all this context from Open Graph, we're just going to be able to show so much more interesting patterns. But then I can just go ahead and click on the link, and the player will show up in Netflix, and I can just watch Pirates of the Caribbean right from there. So with all the activity that your friends will now be able to share, you can discover a lot more content. Now, here is a friend's timeline, Carl's video timeline view. And I can see from here all of the top things that he's watched. Apparently he watches that movie a lot. Yeah, well, you know. Episodes of TV shows that he's watched. This is the summary. It's not all of his activity, it's just the highlights from what he's done. And I could just be browsing the stuff from his life and just happen upon this and discover this. It's a great way to discover new movies and TV shows. And of course, I can just go ahead and click on any of these and they'll start playing in Netflix. So with Open Graph, this next wave of companies understands that if you can help people discover an order of magnitude more content than they could before, then that enables all kinds of new models to work, whether they're ad-supported, subscription-based, or ways to bring you content that they haven't even thought of before. So these new companies aren't just rethinking the experience of watching content with your friends. They're helping to rethink these entire industries. And in the past year, Netflix has stated that one of their biggest strategic goals is to make all of their products more social. So I'd like to invite our board member and Netflix CEO, Reed Hastings, up here to talk about what Netflix is doing with Open Graph. Thanks, Mark.
Two quick good stories and one bad story. Lots of people have been telling me about Breaking Bad. The Netflix algorithms have been recommending Breaking Bad to me. But, there's a lot of recommendations that algorithms do, and I've just never gotten around to watching Breaking Bad. And yesterday, Facebook turned on this interaction that you're going to see for all the Netflix employees. And in the ticker, one of my friends, John Cincutti, it said, watching Breaking Bad right now. And somehow, even though that show had been recommended to me many times by Netflix, I'd never watched it. But somehow I knew I was going to see John today, and so I thought, oh, that'd be so cool. I click on Breaking Bad, and I watched it last night. And I realized, oh my God, there it is right in front of me. Watching content because my friend did it really trumped because the algorithm. And the reason is because I know I'm going to see him about it. And I know he's going to ask me, and he's going to say, hey, Walter's 50, and you're 50, and he tried to be good, and you tried to be good, and are you going to break bad too? So the second good story for you is about a year ago, Mark approached us on doing a tighter integration, getting the whole feed going. And of course, as a partner company, we were a little bit suspicious. Wait, you want all the viewing activity? You're going to have all this information about Netflix members, and doesn't that make us competitively vulnerable? And we spent a long time trying to figure that out. And finally I asked him, what is success for you in this interaction, Mark? And he said, well, how big do you think you're going to grow next year? And I said, X. And he said, success for Facebook is if Netflix grows to 2X. That fundamentally, if Netflix does huge success in pioneering social TV, then many other firms will also become social. And pioneering the social way is what Facebook and Mark are trying to do with the platform vendors. So we're super excited about all of these great applications, about the social aspect of Netflix. And the social aspect of Netflix, to give you the bad story, will be available. Netflix is in 45 countries around the world. And in 44 of them, Netflix-Facebook integration is available. In one of them, the United States of America, there's this outdated privacy law about video disc companies. And luckily, the U.S. Congress has a bill today in Congress to update that old privacy law, which will then allow us to also turn it on in the United States. So we'll blog about this afterwards, and pretty soon we'll be able to have the Netflix-Facebook integration in 45 out of 45 countries. So real excited, and thank you all. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Reed. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the social version of Netflix accelerates the growth in the new markets that they're entering now. But of course, it's not just Netflix and Hulu here. More than a dozen partners have worked with us to build movie, TV, and video apps with Open Graph, all with the goal of helping you discover a lot more content through your friends. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of you guys. It's really been a lot of fun to rethink the experience of watching this content with you. So thank you. Now, we think that Open Graph creates a great opportunity to rethink the way that we discover and read news as well. So now, for the first time, you're going to be able to use a social news app with Open Graph to be able to discover what your friends are reading first. Now, here's some news stories in my newsfeed. There are also really interesting patterns that are now possible to show because of all the activity that's there with Open Graph. And at the top, you'll see, here are all of the most popular articles that my friends are reading across the web on all of these social news apps. So I can just go ahead and click on astronauts. And it'll bring it up in Yahoo News. Yahoo News is by far the largest news site on the web, and they're going to use Open Graph to make it so that you can discover more news stories through your friends. This is going to be available on Yahoo News. Now back to feed, I can also see that 30 of my friends are reading articles today about F8. That's an interesting pattern too. And it'll show me all of the articles that my friends are reading. And I can just go ahead and click on this. This time I want to click on the one from Washington Post at the top. And there it is, a new app from the Washington Post called Washington Post Social Reader, where you can use this to read every piece of content from the Washington Post and their properties. You can see what your friends are reading in those properties. I can click on any of this stuff if I want. And because this is a Canvas app, everyone who uses this will be a Facebook user and can have a social experience. Now, sometimes you don't want to wait for some kind of big pattern to develop, right? And you just want to see news in real time as it's breaking. And for that, Ticker's great. So I can just see, Chris has read this story on the daily, and it just ticks into my ticker, and I can click on it, and it pops up in the daily, which is a new Canvas app. Now, News Corp is releasing this app, the web app version of this, only inside Facebook, because they believe that eventually everyone is going to discover news that they're going to read through their friends. More than a dozen developers have worked with us to build social news apps using Open Graph, all with the goal of helping you discover and read more news. And I'm personally really excited about this. I think that it has the potential to not only rethink the way that we all read news, but to rethink a lot of the way that the whole news industry works. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm thankful to the partners who have worked with us to do this. So thank you, guys. Now, social games are killing it. Games have been the most successful apps on Facebook. And we think that Open Graph is going to take social games to the next level and make them a lot better by helping you discover even more games that you want to play through your friends. Now, first, one of the big things that you're going to notice is that with Open Graph, you're no longer going to have this. Because now with Open Graph, you have the nice, clear dialogue up front, and they can just add activity to your timeline for you, so you don't have to have this experience. And we think that that alone is going to make games a lot better. But even more important is that now when you see your friends playing games across the site, you're going to see real things that they're doing. So instead of before where it was mostly just, okay, this person is playing a game, I can now see, something ticks into my ticker. It's Mike playing Words with Friends with Carl. And I can see right there the word that they played, which is pretty cool. And I can hover over it, and I can see this picture. And it has the picture of their game board and the word that he played right there, which is possible because every piece of content in Open Graph has a picture associated with it. And you can click on this, and it brings up the game. This is Zynga's Words with Friends, now with Open Graph. It's a really cool game, very addictive, if you guys haven't tried it. And it's a really neat experience. And we think that this is going to make social games a lot better. So we've worked with more than a dozen folks to build social games using Open Graph, all with the goal of bringing these frictionless experiences and even more games to all of you guys. So social games have really already transformed the way that we play games and the way that the gaming industry works, but we think that Open Graph is just going to take this to the next level. So thank you, guys. This is going to be good. Now, the last category of apps that I want to talk about we're calling lifestyle apps. And they're these apps that just help you keep track of and express different things from your life, right? So, maybe you're walking or running, you're cooking or eating, or anything else that you want to keep track of and express. And we think that a lot of people want to know what they're doing and keep track of these things. And I know that a lot of people are starting to build these apps, but we think that the combination of that and Open Graph is going to make this space really take off. So I think that this is going to be really big. Now, you can see here, this is a report from a Nike app for running called Nike Plus. I can see on it, this is the longest run that I did. Here are the people that I go running with. They're the places that I run. And it's really easy to use. I just pull my phone out of my pocket, say that I'm going for a run. I can say who I'm with, start, and it uses GPS to do the rest. It tracks where I've run, my pace, the total distance that I've gone. It's really cool, and it adds all that activity, and then at the end of a month, I get this nice report rolling up all of my activity. It's really neat. And of course, if you want this app, you can just hover over it in my timeline, click Add to Timeline, and it's yours. It's cool. Now, another thing I really want to have on my timeline is the food that I eat. So I'm going to do this with food spotting. And here I could just see, here are the foods that I've enjoyed, and here are the things that I've spotted. And again, really easy to do. I just pull my phone out of my pocket, tap to open the app, enter it. I can even take a picture. It'll aggregate all the interesting stuff that I'm doing, giving me this nice report every month. I haven't had timeline for a year yet, but I'm really looking forward to my first annual eating report when it comes out. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, it's not just Nike and food spotting here. We've worked with dozens and dozens of other partners here as well to build this completely new class of social apps, all with the goal of helping you express who you are and discover new things through your friends. So I want to say thank you for all of the partners that we've worked with to make the next version of Open Graph come to life. So thank you, guys. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Enough? We got the Open Graph. It's a completely new class of social apps to discover new things through your friends with frictionless experiences, real-time serendipity, and finding patterns in your friends' activity. And now, I want to show you a little video that we made about these new apps that are now possible. Now, there's a lot more detail about how to actually build these apps. And in order to go through that, I'd like to invite our CTO, Brett Taylor, up here to walk you through it. Brett?
Thank you very much. My name's Brett Taylor, and I'm Facebook's Chief Technology Officer. I'm going to walk you through how Open Graph actually works, how your apps fit into this new vision for our product. We're going to be rolling out Timeline over the next couple months progressively. And when a lot of you show up to your timelines, they're going to look pretty sparse. I've been on Facebook for a relatively long time. I have about 6 years worth of status updates and photos on my timeline. But those status updates and photos, they don't really tell the full story of who I am. I mean, for one thing, I cook. I cook pretty much every night of the week. I'm not going to publish a status update every time I walk up to my stove. But I'd love it to have all the recipes on my profile automatically. And I definitely want to see the recipes my friends are finding. I'm also a runner. It would be awesome to have all my runs on my profile automatically. And this May, when I run the beta breakers, I want that map and my time right next to that photo of me crossing the finish line. And according to Mark, I'm apparently a huge Kenny G fan. And the story of who I am is certainly incomplete without that epic Kenny G playlist. And perhaps most importantly in the context of F8, I'm a programmer. I maintain 3 or 4 different GitHub projects, and they're a really big part of my professional identity. If my colleagues saw my timeline and it didn't have my GitHub projects, it would be an incomplete picture of who I am. And this is really the opportunity of Open Graph. For every person, for every individual interest and individual activity, there's an app that you'll write that will make their timeline the personal experience we know it can be. Open Graph is really the biggest change we've made to our platform since we launched it almost 4 years ago at the first F8. Since that F8, social applications have really all been about sharing. But Open Graph apps are about so much more than that. They're about self-expression, and they're about serendipity. Take that running app. I didn't add it to my timeline because I really needed my friends to see any particular run. I added it to my timeline because running's important to me. And as a great side effect, now I get to find all the routes my friends are finding. My cooking app is another good example. I don't want to spam my friends' news feeds every time I pick up a spatula. But it would be awesome if my friends looking at my timeline saw the recipes I've been cooking. Open Graph enables this in a lightweight way that would have never been possible if my cooking app popped up a share dialog every time I looked at the recipe. Open Graph really is the biggest opportunity for new classes of apps on Facebook since we launched the platform. So how do you integrate Open Graph into your app? Our main goal through all of this in developing Open Graph was simplicity. I'm going to walk through the nuts and bolts of what it means to write an Open Graph app, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how frictionless both the user experience and the developer experience is. And we know that the reason all of you have chosen to build with the Facebook in the first place is because you want more people to discover your app on Facebook. We've tried to make the act of people discovering your app as frictionless as user experience. As you saw in Mark's demos, adding an app to your timeline really is just a one-click experience. You click Add to Timeline, and you're done. Adding an app to your timeline is like wiring a real-time connection between your app and Facebook. Let's take iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio is a pretty cool internet radio service, and they're completely integrated with Facebook. They're one of our launch partners today. Whether you're using iHeartRadio on your phone, on a tablet, or in your browser, you'll see the same simple button, Add to Timeline. And right next to that button, you're going to see screenshots of exactly what iHeartRadio looks like on your timeline. You'll have a really concrete picture of what you're getting into before you even start using the app. And then when I click Add to Timeline, I'm done. There is no step 2. I can just start using the app and listening to music. And every time I listen to a song, my timeline just magically updates. I just had to make one decision in this whole experience. Do I want music on my timeline? And once I've made that decision, I can just use the app. I can just listen to music, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. The most important thing iHeartRadio has done in this experience is make their app social by design. By making that Add to Timeline such a prominent part of the sign-up experience, they're setting the expectation for every single one of their users that this is a different kind of radio service. It's a social radio service. And they're not asking my permission to be social. It's a feature of the app. I'm using iHeartRadio because I want that feature. I want music on my timeline. And by setting this expectation for every single one of their users up front, they can make the rest of the experience completely frictionless. They don't need share buttons everywhere. They don't need to redesign their app. The play button on iHeartRadio looks like any other play button I have on my iPhone. Just like you know that when you publish a photo on Facebook, it's social because that's the way Facebook works, playing music on iHeartRadio is social because that's the way iHeartRadio works. This is the fundamental challenge and the fundamental opportunity of Open Graph. In your industry, the app that's able to set that expectation, that everything's social, up front, that's the app that's going to win. Because that's the app I'm going to see my friends using. So what's going on under the hood for an app like this? It's actually pretty simple. The first step to integrating your app with the Open Graph is figuring out what activity from your app belongs in the social graph. I'll go into note what that means in a second, but once you've done that, you just need to design how you want your app to look in people's timelines and put a single Add to Timeline button in your app. That's it. You could do this entire integration this afternoon after the keynote, and I'm serious. The most nuanced part of this process is probably deciding how your app fits into the social graph. As Mark mentioned, last year on this stage, we introduced the like button, which enabled you to like anything you see around the web. Open Graph is about expanding that to all social actions. Not just liking, but listening, watching, reading, walking, any activity you can think of for your app. And that's what it means to be a part of the social graph. When I put your app on my timeline, what activity do I want to see? For a music app like iHeartRadio, it's pretty obvious. I want to see the songs I'm listening to and the stations I'm playing. And if I'm using the app for a long time, I'm probably also going to create a few custom radio stations. That would be awesome on my timeline. Imagine creating a radio station for your graduation party and having it on your timeline right next to your graduation photo. And that's it. This is the social graph for iHeartRadio. Now, every time I listen to a song on iHeartRadio, the activity from the app is going to the Graph API in this data structure. And by using this data structure, objects and actions in the social graph, iHeartRadio is tapping into all the experiences Mark showed you earlier: newsfeed, ticker, and timeline. And since the activity from iHeartRadio is structured, I'm not just going to discover iHeartRadio through individual song listens from individual friends, but from patterns and aggregations on that activity. 5 people listen to the same song. 10 people listen to songs by the same artist. This is the power of the social graph. By using the same underlying structure that we use at Facebook for our own apps, iHeartRadio is leveraging all the technology we've built to power timeline and newsfeed for the apps that we write. And you could really imagine this applying to any social app. If I were making that cooking app that I was talking about earlier, I'd probably include all the recipes I've added, and probably the recipes in my friends' cookbooks that I've bookmarked. If I were doing a fashion app, I'd include all the outfits I designed, and probably the clothing I purchased as well. The expressiveness of the Open Graph is really limitless. But as you saw in all the demos, Open Graph isn't just about data. You want your app to look beautiful in the context of people's timelines, especially given how visually rich the product is. When someone adds your app to their timeline, they're telling the story of who they are through your app. And as the app developer, you're in the best position to decide what stories people would probably want to tell. In iHeartRadio, the simplest story I can tell is probably just, here's the music I'm listening to. A simple reverse chronological list of all the songs that have been playing on my radio stations. Or maybe I want to show a grid instead of the artists that have played most frequently on my radio stations. Both of these pictures are screenshots of what we call aggregations. Aggregations are a combination of a query, in this case, give me the artists I've played, sorted by frequency, and a layout style, like a list or a grid. As a developer of your app, you can mix and match queries you write with layout styles you choose to tell pretty much any story you can imagine about your app. I might want to show the songs I've listened to most frequently last month with play counts. Or maybe I just want to show a big picture of my favorite radio station on my timeline. If I location-enabled the app, I could even show a map of where I most often listen to the radio. And the list goes on and on. We're launching 6 different layout styles today and a pretty flexible query engine. Between the two, there's a practically infinite number of ways people can see your app in their timelines. You can pick as many of these as you want. And as the user of iHeartRadio, I get to pick and choose which of those stories I want to show my friends. Now that you've designed your timeline integration, there's really just one simple step left. Put an Add to Timeline button in your app. And from day one, Open Graph and Add to Timeline will work on almost every device conceivable. It works on the web, it works in Facebook apps, it works in iPhone apps, Android apps, iPad apps, and the mobile web. Wherever your app is, you can add to Timeline. Over 350 million people use Facebook on their mobile devices every single month. It's a huge part of the Facebook experience. And we expect it will be an even bigger part of the Open Graph experience. It's our guess that the most popular Open Graph apps won't be websites you use in a browser on your desktop, but apps that you use in a device in your pocket. And all of this works today. The moment you get access to the developer beta, you can start adding to Timeline in all of these platforms. And that's it. That's all it takes to integrate your app with the Open Graph. And the next question probably all of you are asking is, how will people find my app now? App discovery has been pretty much the focal point of the Facebook platform since we launched at F8. Many of you in this room have pioneered the field of social design, and there's entire books written about creating the right incentives in social apps. But the things we've heard over and over again is that it's just too hard right now. You shouldn't need a PhD in computer science and psychology just to make an app successful on Facebook. If people like it, their friends should see it. It's just that simple. You shouldn't need tricks and gimmicks. We feel like Open Graph gives us the opportunity to really double down on that vision. The more engaging your app is, the more people will discover it on Facebook. It's a pretty ambitious vision given where our platform is today, but we feel like we've made a lot of the right technology investments to get us there. And the centerpiece of those investments is a new technology we call GraphRank. GraphRank is the artificial intelligence system that manages the discovery of all Open Graph activity around Facebook. Its main job is to figure out what activity is most interesting to me. What's the activity I want to see in my newsfeed when I log in the morning versus the activity I really only want to see if I'm browsing through someone's timeline. It's designed to work for any app, even apps that haven't been created yet. It's smart enough to know that that song I listened to this morning is way less important than that playlist I spent 6 hours making last night, even though it has no special knowledge of music. And GraphRank is also personalized. I'm friends with both my college buddies and my colleagues from work. And those relationships, they're just different. Just because my mom wants to see the movies I'm watching on Netflix doesn't mean she wants to see my GitHub check-ins. GraphRank is not a global score. It's a personalized view of you and your friends' interests. And simply put, the higher your app's GraphRank is for me, the more likely it is I'll see your app on Facebook. And because of that, it's going to be a pretty important part of the Facebook Open Graph experience. And we want to make it as transparent as possible. From day one, you'll be able to log into your app settings on Open Graph and see quantitatively, this is the activity that people are finding most interesting. And conversely, this is the activity that's annoying the heck out of people. You'll be able to optimize your Open Graph app in real time based on real feedback from real people. And that's really where we want to take our platform with all of you. We want every single one of your apps to integrate with the Open Graph. It's so simple, you could literally do it in an afternoon. All it really takes is ambition. The ambition to redefine what it means to be social in your industry. And from there, the most engaging apps, the apps that people love using the most, will automatically get discovered by more people on Facebook. And then that way you all can focus on what you already do best, which is make apps people love to use. Thank you very much. I want to welcome to the stage next Chris Cox, who's our Vice President of Product Management. He's going to walk through the founding story of Timeline, really the philosophy that guided our development of this entire product experience. Chris?
Thanks, man. Meet Nick Felton. Nicholas Felton is an information designer from Mill Valley, California, just over the Golden Gate Bridge. His work was a huge inspiration on a lot of the big ideas we've presented today, and I want to explain how.
Information design is sort of a religion. You have to believe that underneath every pile of data is an amazing story, and you need the discipline to unearth it and to present it in a compelling way. These are the people that can take a 2 terabyte dump of the entire history of Wikipedia and translate it into something that tells a story and is visually beautiful. And that's what's behind me, the story of Wikipedia's growth from inception to now on one page. And it doesn't have to be fine art. Infographics have become part and parcel of the way we express news in modern times. For basically any data-rich topic, you can probably find a one-page infographic that tells the story on a page. Like what we throw away. It turns out 15% of it is food. Or if you look at all the data from the recession on one page, it might jump out that 24% of young people have moved back in with their parents. Or the first time you look at a 2-scale drawing of our federal spending might be the first time it occurs to you how much our federal government spends on weapons versus education. And it's not just topics. There's nothing we love to summarize more than time itself. Every December, right around the first or second week of the year, newsrooms around the world stop making news and start summarizing the year gone by. It's the year in review, and we eat it right up. Not just major journals, but topical summaries, golf, sports, entertainment, celebrities, fashion, games. In that period of time, anything that can be summarized is. Even things that aren't real. So Nicholas was in the business of designing visualizations of annual reports for some of the most prestigious journals in the world with some of the most sprawling and expansive data sets. He'd gotten very good at collecting the history and data from one year and presenting it on a single page. And it was while he was doing this when he was struck with an idea. What would an annual report look like for one person? Not the summary of the global economy in 2010, but the story of one person's life for 1 year on one page. And it's not that crazy of an idea. My grandfather collected 3 things: shells, coins, and scrapbooks. Scrapbooks were the most time-intensive and the most rewarding of his pursuits. He'd sit in the living room come the end of the year and surround himself with postcards, newspaper clippings, family photographs, class portraits, stamps, foreign currencies, basically anything that could be adhered to a page. Then he would arrange them one page after the other in chronological order, with the little yellow captions, the month and the year that each thing happened, the impossible-to-use plastic cellophane for sealing it all in to make it timeless. And what would he do when he was done? Put it on a bookshelf to collect dust. Until some unsuspecting visitor came along to ask if he'd ever been to London, and down the rabbit hole they went. So what do you get when you combine the nostalgic exercise of my grandfather with the discipline and beauty of information design? Well, it might look something like this. The 2005 Feltron Annual Report, 14 pages, one person, 1 year, one book. Nicholas began by collecting the mundane details of his life, like which days he'd played and which days he'd worked. Then he arranged each section of the book to reflect an aspect of his life, the way he would relay it to a friend over dinner. Where did you go? What did you listen to? What did you see? What did you read? Anything good? What did you eat? And what other random stuff happened that year? And collected together, the result was amazing. It was received incredibly well by the design community, not just because it was beautiful, but because it dealt with the problem of the information age. What are we going to do with all this data? So Nicholas was urged to continue creating these reports. So each year, he collected details from his life in more granular detail, each year presenting them in a more compelling and more beautiful narrative. So that by 2009, it was hard to call it anything other than what it was: art. It was at the point where he was tracking each taxi ride, each subway journey, each walk through Central Park, so that at the end of the year, he could have a bird's eye view of his pattern of movement through Manhattan. It was then turned into something of such incredibly high production value that as soon as we got wind of this at Facebook, we had one reaction: we have to try and hire this guy. We have to try and get him from Brooklyn, New York to Palo Alto, California to help us on this problem. And after several conversations, Nicholas Felton and his partner in crime, Ryan Case, moved out to Palo Alto to help out on what you've seen today. Just before, it's pretty cool. Just before, we'd hired another New Yorker named Sam Lessin. Sam Lessin had arrived at Facebook, and his job was to help us reimagine the profile. And on his first day, he exclaimed, rather unceremoniously, that the Facebook profile, in its current incarnation, was the single biggest lost opportunity in the history of human storytelling. And for effect, he printed out his profile from now all the way back to 2004 when he joined and taped the whole thing together, stretching halfway across the office to remind us how much of the past had fallen off. Back at headquarters, teams of designers and engineers were working hard on this problem of giving people tools for remembering. And in the spirit of accidents at Facebook that sometimes yield amazing results, for one day in June, we accidentally launched this prototype to our entire user base for 1 hour. It was called Memories, and it was just an easy way of looking through your old stuff on Facebook. And though it wasn't ready for the prime time, in its moment in the sun, we got incredibly positive feedback. So we tucked that away and kept working. And it made sense. In the 6 years that I've been on Facebook, a lot has happened to me. I've dropped out of college. I've started a new job. I've moved like 7 times. We've launched a bunch of new products. I've had all these anniversaries and weddings and family reunions. I've gotten engaged and then married. We've even gotten a new dog. And to go look at my profile today, it's all behind this gray link. And that's the problem we've set out to solve with all that we're talking about today. What is the modern vehicle for the timeless process of scrapbooking? And it starts with a box with all your stuff in it. Except that this one is comprehensive, it's better organized, it's easy to use, and you don't have to spread it out on your living room floor. From there, you get a giant canvas on which to present the different aspects of your life as you might explain them to a friend in a long conversation. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? What do you do? Who are your best friends? Do we know anyone in common? And then maybe you pull out some photos to show me your family, your dog, your best friends, where you work. What's the most amazing place you've ever been? Where do you spend your time? Tell me about what inspires you. Authors, thinkers, journalists, musicians. And then from there, what is your favorite film? What are your favorite albums of all time? What games do you play? And wherever the conversation leads us. From there, tell me about last summer. What were you doing in the 90s? What was your childhood like? And then on top of that, a magnificent giant photo, an easy way of browsing it, and you have a container big enough for anyone's story. We've had the chance in the past few months to play around with this. And the amazing thing when you switch from the current profile to the new timeline is just how much you've forgotten was there. On July 31st of this year, I got married. And on one of the, thank you. And on one of the most amazing days of my life, there's so much going on, it's kind of a blur. Thankfully, my friends and family were there to capture the whole thing in beautiful photographs. And now I get to keep those. I met all of this extended family and relatives for the first time, and now I get to keep that too. We hired a bunch of local businesses, a florist, a winery, a band, a produce company. Those are a part of how I remember it. Leading up to the event, we had these 5 reggae albums on repeat in the house for about 4 weeks, trying to figure out what was going to be our first dance. And that, to me, is the sound of the ceremony. And then one of the more painful parts of the memory is traveling all around the Bay Area before, trying to pick people up and drop them off and go to the tailor and go to the jeweler and make sure everything's ready. But that's a part of what happened. Then afterwards, inundated with congratulations and support, my wall became a social memory of what had happened. And now I get to keep that too. So when you turn this thing on, what is incredible is that not only are your memories there, but they're organized and arranged in one place. And there's a lot of stuff there that you didn't even realize or remember actually was there. And when you want to get back to reality, all you need to do is scroll up to the top of the page. Timeline really is a blank canvas. It's big enough for anybody's story. And the most amazing thing for us is that we have no idea what's going to happen next. It's yours to fill out. We're a culture of builders. Now let's go make something awesome. Thank you. Let's bring up Mark. Thanks, man. Here you go. I don't need that. So that's what we have for you today. We have Timeline. It's the story of your life with all of your stories, all your apps, and a completely new way to express yourself. And we have Open Graph, a new class of apps to help you discover new things through your friends, with frictionless experiences, real-time serendipity, and finding patterns in your friends' activity. So when is all this going to launch? Well, for Timeline, we have a beta period, and it starts now, right as soon as we're done. If you're a developer, you're going to be able to start using Timeline today, and everyone else is going to be able to sign up to get it, and we're going to roll it out widely over the next few weeks as we polish all the edges. And for Open Graph, well, we want everyone to be able to use Timeline first before they start adding all these apps. So we're going to let you start adding these new apps as we roll out Timeline over the next few weeks. But for a few apps, the media apps that work pretty well with just Ticker and Newsfeed, like music, movies, TV, and news, you're going to be able to start adding those now too. So we have Timeline beta starts now, and music, movies, and TV are launching now. So we weren't going to let you go home empty-handed. Now, I just want to close with a quick story. When I was growing up, one company that I really looked up to is Intel, because they had Moore's Law. They were not only a great technology company, but they understood the social impact that they were having, and they measured it down to a T. They knew that every couple of years, the amount of transistors that you could fit on a circuit would double, and they understood what kind of amazing new products would be possible, and more importantly, what that meant for society and for the world. Moore's Law not only guided the development of Intel, it guided the development of the whole technology industry for decades. And I think that Facebook shares a pretty similar approach. We exist at the intersection between technology and social issues, and we spend a lot of time thinking about both. And just like Intel with Moore's Law, our development is guided by the idea that every year, the amount that people want to add and share and express is increasing. So we can look into the future, and we can see what might exist, and it's going to be really, really good. And we're on this journey, traveling up this curve, and I just want to say, it's really an honor to be on it with all you guys, because looking back 7 years, who would have thought that we'd be here today? It's really a dream, and I wake up every single day, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to work on these problems with you guys. So every year, we gather at F8, and we take the next step up this curve. So let's take the next step up this curve. Let's go build some great stuff. Let's rethink some industries. And I'll see you all at next year's F8 when we take the next step up the curve. Thank you.
'Cause all I do